Stop the cap.
Don't forget to pick up my new book. It's on Amazon. The link is in the description box. People want me to speak on the Supreme Court and the Voting Rights Act and basically the elimination of Section 2, which I guess it prevented the redistricting, all the gerrymandering type of stuff. A lot of people don't really grasp, understand what gerrymandering is or which I don't even think gerrymandering should be a thing. You got black people that run around talking about Megan Thee Stallion. I think I'll make one more, poignant, straight to the point, no chaser video talking about that, because I can see that the sisters are struggling with understanding what the problem is here. I thought I laid it out, but I can definitely try to make a shorter video and just get right to the point, because my video was kind of long and I really didn't try to point home until like 30 minutes into the video. But no, I really need to spell this out because I can see that it's a problem. But people are like, oh, we're talking about Megan Thee Stallion and Klay Thompson, but we're not talking about, the Voting Rights Act. I saw Amazing Lucas's video. Amazing Lucas has got to be a shill. He's just a shill, because he says things that are nonsensical. Like, he's like a smart, dumb nigga sometimes. It's because y'all voted for the couch and y'all stay home. And that's why this happened. The Supreme Court has been a 5-4 majority since 2018. Donald Trump put in 3 Supreme Court justices, right? Neil Gorsuch, Amy Coney Barrett, right? And Brett Kavanaugh. 3 Supreme Court justices. It's been 5-4 since 2018. It is now 2026. Okay, I don't know what Clarence Thomas is smoking, like, again, Clarence Thomas lost me. If you read his book and he's like, I now know the sting of affirmative action, because, he couldn't get into the New York law firm that he wanted to get into and then ended up, what was he at? Like fucking Mississippi or some shit. He ended up working at some law firm that he didn't want to be at. I now know the sting of affirmative. Well, shut the fuck up. You don't know what you're talking about. And Clarence Thomas is just weird to me because, like, he'll get certain things so right, like the Second Amendment. But then when it comes to shit like this, anything that has to do, he used race in his what do you call it? He used race in his Nysurpa v. Brewing ruling, where he talked about Justice Tanning. Justice Tanning was the justice of the Dred Scott case, the one that was like, we can't let these niggers be equal to white man because the white man he's not bound to respect any law, that pertains to the Negro. If we let these Negroes be recognized as equals, then they can walk around and go to and fro, and they can even carry guns. You know what I mean? That's what he was on, right? Which goes to show that the Second Amendment has nothing to do with a fucking militia. It has everything to do with the right of the people, the right of the individual, right? Because he recognized if blacks were freaking, citizens, and they would be able to carry guns just like white men, which has nothing to do with a militia, right? Very important distinction, right? And, and some of that might have came from, Scalia, his buddy Scalia, because they were very, strong and ardent proponents of the Second Amendment. Right. But this goes into why I tell black people, like, y'all need to be the most heavily armed group in America. I don't even know what black people should do moving forward. Like, my attitude is almost like black people should just do whatever the fuck they want to do and not follow the fucking rules if they're going to take black people's right to vote away. And essentially it is taking black people's right to vote away or because it nullifies vote. How does it nullify the black vote? How does it nullify? Simple, because right, we all know that this came from Jim Crow and poll taxes and, what do they call that shit? Reading, it's not a poll tax. What's it called? Poll tax. And then you had like the reading requirements. They had all type of bullshit to try to prevent black people from voting. This is what caused the freaking Ocoee, Florida, the Coe, Florida massacre, right? This is what caused the Elaine, Arkansas massacre, which was, well, actually was farmers collectively bargaining and whatnot, but that dives into the politics. They've been trying to stop black people from voting since, Reconstruction, because it's a white man's country, it's a white man's world, all that shit. They run around and say racism doesn't exist, but you can see it. I mean, anybody who, if people want to be ahistorical, which is what Clarence Thomas does selectively, are black people prevented from voting, or black people stopped at the polls? No, black people are not stopped at the polls, but the issue here is about proportionate representation. Okay, so the problem with taking away Section 2 is the issue of gerrymandering, which I don't even think gerrymandering should even be allowed. Okay, and it reminds me of, I remember when that black girl won at Ole Miss, and she was kind of big, and the white people were all upset that she got to be the prom queen, or not the prom queen, the freaking, the homecoming queen, right, at Ole Miss. And Ole Miss is known for being racist, white supremacist campus, all that other bullshit, right? So the reason why the black girl got to be homecoming queen, right, even though she didn't meet the requirements of conventional beauty, which is what the white people were all upset about, not just the race, but she was a big girl. Okay, she wasn't up there looking like Six the Goddess. Okay, so basically the white people, they had like 3 different runners, like runner-ups or whatever. Not even runner-ups, I shouldn't call her runner-up, but they had 3 different women or 4 different women that were white, that were running for homecoming queen. Well, that split the vote. So all the white people, one group of white people, they voted for Susie. The other group voted for Kelly. The other group voted for Stacy. And then the other group voted for Veronica, right? Those are my white girl names, okay? And all of the black people voted for the black woman. So the black woman won because she got the most votes, because all the other candidates, their votes got split up, amongst the white people, because the white people had more than one person that they were voting for. Gerrymandering is kind of the same thing. So with gerrymandering, what they do is let's say you got a majority black community, right? Where you should have majority black, I shouldn't say majority black representation, but you're typically going to end up with, black representation, right? Everything from the local police chief to the city council, all that stuff. And then the representatives that are going to run for that district, right, for that congressional district, are going to be typically black, because it's a majority black district, right? Or black in, some other group, because black people, they get a portion of some of the Hispanic vote, especially in the Northeast, but I can't say that for the rest of the country. Because it's like split. We all know that the Hispanic community, you got those that think that they're white, you got those that are, a little bit more race conscious, so that's typically what you'll see. You'll see minorities running up, this like AOC getting elected and all that other stuff, right? But what they want to do, what the gerrymandering does, is you split up the black district. If the black district is too big, you split it up, and then you diffuse their voting power, right? Because so you take the black population, and then you'll split it up, and you'll be like, oh, well, we're going to take this black population in, I know like East Orange is probably like more majority Hispanic, but it's like, okay, we're going to take this majority Hispanic population, and we're going to give, some to, I don't know, Montclair, and then we're going to give some to, this other district, Union City or some shit like that, right? And that way, they split it all up, so now you don't have a majority Hispanic district or a majority black, district, which again, the people are going to want to have representatives that reflect them and reflect their interest, right? So they're already trying to, redraw the districts. My attitude is several things. It's like, again, I keep trying to tell black people, like, you're not going to stop white supremacy from white supremacy. Like, you're not. You're 13% of the population. You're not. Black people need to be ready for war, in my opinion, but y'all not. Y'all keep thinking that America is somehow salvageable, right? And again, when it comes to white people always get fucked up in these situations. They always do, because white supremacy is expensive, and the white elites don't care about the white proletariat. That's why you see all these white people, they walking on the side of the road and shit because they can't afford the fucking gas. You know, it's $20 more for me to fill up my tank now. A whole $20 more. You start adding that into somebody's budget who's working minimum wage or whatever, they can't afford the shit. Right? There's a lot of podunk white people out here, but, because, they believe in their mind that, that all, social programs or all policies that are meant to keep costs down is just for the niggas. They end up getting fucked up in the process. So again, just like all these white people had to fuck around and find out when it came to, Trump, winning the last election, I'm like, oh, there'll just be more fuck around and find out. Because that means that the Republicans are going to go through and they're going to push all the shit that they want. And because they label anything associated with poverty as black, like synonymous with black, and then act like poor whites or just degular whites don't exist, right? Then all those white people are going to get fucked up. You see, I don't know. I'm the type, I like giving people full creative control. Because I'm like, you can't blame us. This is what you wanted. Right? White people are killing me with the way that they're crying and whining, online about fucking immigrants and all this other shit. I'm like, immigrants ain't got nothing to do with why your motherfucking gas is expensive. Your man is up there. Okay? That's your king. Okay? He's up there. Right? I don't give a fuck about, my student loans and my housing and why is rent $2,000? I'm like, yo, your man is up there. Ain't got nothing to do with us. Black people are quiet on this shit. And then the thing is, there's actual, to me, there's actual beauty in when white people do what they constantly run around and try to deny that they're trying to do. It's almost like what the Republicans say when it comes to the slippery slope of gun control, right? Where they're like, you can't give up your guns because the liberals will come through and all they want to do is take all your guns. And then you got Senator Feinstein up there talking about, Mr. and Mrs. America. If it was up to me, I'd tell them, turn them all in. I'm like, exactly. That's what you've been wanting to do. And the same thing with this. Not to mention the fact that, when it comes to black people that are really apolitical or you get all these coons in the population that try to run around and tell you, oh, them white folks, they ain't that bad. I think you just talk about race too much. That's what I think. I don't think that white people is trying to do anything to black people. I think that we's American, and I think that everything's all equal, and that's what it is, right? And I'm like, yeah, what you got to say now? See, they quiet. They quiet now. Now, there's a flip side to this, right? Because the flip side is no more guaranteed districts to the Democrats, right? Because the Democrats, right, let's face it, right, they have not been serving the interest of black people, right? They could have, protected all this and fought the good fight, but they didn't do it. Oh, now at the 11th hour, now they mad. Oh, now they want to bring up the black people and, black people, what we gonna do? Nigga, you wasn't protecting shit this whole goddamn time. You wasn't guarding anything. You was. I distinctly remember before Kamala, got, before she lost the election, y'all was up there, y'all trying to get free shit for the Latinos. Right? Kamala went up on TV. I'm not going to do anything specifically for black people. No. Right? That's what she said. Right? And then again, I remind you that the court has been 5-4 conservative since 2018. So voting for Kamala Harris would not have stopped any of this because this is what they wanted to do. If you want to go back and point to any moment in time, where their this could have been prevented, it would have been when Ruth Bader Ginsburg was up there. When she was up there as the crypt keeper, you know what I mean? And she fucking, she was on that Charlton Heston, from my cold dead hands, I won't give up this gavel, you take it from my cold dead hands. And literally that's what happened. And that's one of the reasons why Trump was able to appoint 3 Supreme Court justices. That's why he was able to do it. Like this whole lifelong, justice on the bench and everything. Despite the fact that you in your fucking 80s and you need to step down because you could die at any moment, and you should let, somebody young come in there, you know what I mean, who's party affiliated with you. I'm just saying, if you subscribe to the whole political system, right, or the political party system, yeah, she should have stepped the fuck down. She didn't do that. Blame a woman. Don't blame Trump. Blame a woman. But see, I already know y'all ain't gonna do that, because she stayed her old decrepit ass up there, and then that allowed Trump to go in and put in, a majority conservative court. She didn't step down. So, when it comes to, what I've been saying about how hostile this country is to black people, y'all still running around thinking shit is sweet. Y'all still ain't out here. You ain't carrying. You ain't fucking, got a house, loaded up to the brim, ready for some shit to pop off. Because don't be surprised if they, later on, oh, well, we should get rid of the 14th Amendment and all that other shit. Maybe they don't even have to go that far, because I'm saying if they've diluted you out of politics, which is essentially what this has done, if they've diluted you out of politics, then it doesn't really matter. It's irrelevant. Right? Because we're only 13% of the population. There's only so many districts that are going to be, majority black. And majority of them are throughout the South. Because that's where the majority of black Americans live, in the South. Georgia, South Carolina, right? Florida, Texas. That's where the majority of black people live. Virginia, although Virginia's already turned blue. The other thing that I think something that should be a concern is, in my opinion, this is the first step towards an actual civil war, like actual hot war. Why do I say that? Because what's going to end up happening, most likely, is you're going to see a second great migration of black people moving out of the South and into the North and into blue states. That's what you're going to see. You're going to see a reversal. It'll be over the course of, decades. You know what I mean? But I'm just saying, that's if you can't get any representation, right? If they're just going to keep, redrawing districts and diluting the vote, which they're allowed to do, I believe it's every 10 years, right? Even though I think that the white folks are going to get Trump up out of there. I do think that there's going to be Nuremberg trials and all that other shit. But I'm just saying, long run, yeah, it'll be a balkanization. You'll see black people leaving the South and trying to move, to, cities or states that are basically liberal and don't, or Democrat, whatever you want to call it, that don't do that type of gerrymandering. I don't particularly care for Democrats doing that. I think there's been a whole breakdown of, what do you want to call it, decorum in politics. It's hot war territory. I'm trying to tell y'all. It's hot war, civil war, like that movie, The Civil War, which it was so not what people expected. I could make a better Civil War movie probably using a fucking AI app. I could definitely make a better Civil War movie, using, if I had like Sori or some shit like that. Oh yeah, that bitch would be looking like Sicario and whatnot. Talking about the real deal of what would happen. I should write a script right now. No, seriously. Seriously. because that movie didn't touch on. It tried to be apolitical about something political. Like, it's just no dumb. You're gonna see a balkanization. You're gonna see people moving around, relocating, and whatnot. You're gonna see the Nuremberg trials come. Shortly after November, right? You're gonna see, all. I don't even think that some of the Trump's, previous biggest supporters are going to support him. Like, who's that white guy? That's that Marine guy, Sean something. He don't. He's like, yo, man, pedophilia. He's like, hey, I ain't fucking with you. That's a big no-no. That's a big no-no. So they're not going to be there, but that doesn't mean that they fuck with black people, right? Because I'm telling you, it's going to come down to some, you get a right number of these sort of Steve Miller thinking type of motherfuckers up there. Oh yeah, it'll definitely be on some door to door. We're going to purge, and ICE is showing up at the door trying to drag people out their house and everything else like that. And we repealed the 14th Amendment and all that shit. Definitely. That's what I'm saying. You need to strap up, get your training up, and all that shit, right? It's like when the Nazis took over Germany, man. It was baby steps. All that shit didn't happen at once. It was in baby steps. I addressed that in the Black Matriarchy, talking about that shit. I addressed way too much stuff that I shouldn't say doesn't have anything to do with, the Black Matriarchy and kill me, but it's tied in because, white supremacy is the root of, the Black Matriarchy. It only exists because it's propped up by the system of white supremacy. That's what allows it to exist. You see, you undermine, a group of men, and then whatever, give women support, resources, whatever. You know what I mean? It's a matriarchy at that point. Plain and simple. But what I was going to say about the, in terms of the whole thing with the representation and Nuremberg trials, they're gonna push back majorly, because you're gonna have a solidly red South and a solidly blue North. That's what it's gonna look like. That's balkanization. Technically, balkanization is basically when a country breaks up into its factions, like how Yugoslavia broke up and whatnot, and then you end up with these factions. But I'm saying even within the context of America, I'll call it pre-balkanization. Pre-balkanization is everybody going to their respective corner, and then you end up with some. The Missouri Compromise type shit, where you have, some irreconcilable differences, and then, a shot is fired, shot is popped off, and then people start mobilizing, even though I think Americans overall are too fat and largely too broke to mobilize anything. The South, they got their guns. They got, you got people that got stashes and shit. But most people ain't got shit. Most people don't have 1,000 rounds of 5.56 sitting in their house. They don't. Most people can't even hit the broadside of a barn. They can't punch out the center of a target with a handgun. They can't. I go to the range quasi regularly and I see it. Terrible shots. And then that gun will sit in the on the shelf and collect dust. They just like to have it just to say that they have it, but they don't use it and they don't train with it. But personally, I'm like, nah, there's multiple things in here. That I'm like, yeah, I'm to the Uncle Toms, I'm like, I'm glad you see it now. And to the what was the other population I was going to bring up? And then to the people who are like, oh, it can't get that bad, See, I don't know. I'm very pessimistic. I'm a rather pessimistic person when it comes to once I see a couple things and I have a intuition about human nature and shit. Once I see a couple of things going on, I'm like, I know what this is. I know what this is. That's why I carry now, because I'm a pessimist, you know. But I like to, be ready so I don't have to get ready. Because, you know, to me, the other thing is like when you get these people that, they like to deny, oh, we would never do that. Like I was saying about the liberals trying to take everybody's guns away. Oh, we would never do that. Yeah, but you see what they just did, right? I mean, there's no reason to do that other than you want absolute fucking power. You don't want the other side to have a voice. It's not even, see, that's not even a situation where there's any sort of compromise. To where, you like back in the day, you used to have Republicans and Democrats, I'm talking about the white folks. They used to come together and be like, all right, you know, let's talk about, what we could do here. I'll give you this if you give me this. That sort of negotiation. That shit is gone now. And it might turn into some shit. And this goes back to, the Trump, when all the black people come outside and everything else. I have a feeling it'll get to that level. You know what I mean? Because I'm saying, what are you really talking about when you're talking about no representation at all? No representation at all in areas that are clearly majority black. That's going to be a motherfucking problem. You talking about some serious political violence, at that point. When people sit there and they look up, and you got an area that's like, 60% black or more, and suddenly, well, here's our fucked up CNN maps, when they do the little CNN and all that, fucking bullshit ass math that they do. The winner takes all. That's another problem that we have in Europe. They have the party that wins is proportional to, like, they'll have multiple parties. They have more than one party. They'll have the Green Party, and they'll have the Conservative Party, and the Liberal Party, and the Workers' Party. They got all different type of parties, and depending on how the votes go, then each party will have a certain number of representatives, in its party. Now, I don't know how effective that is. Europeans now, they'll tell you it's not effective in Europe. They can't do anything, and all this other multi-party system and everything, right? So there's a lot of people who feel like politics is one big charade, right? But in America, with a two-party system, people can having that winner takes all, and you now have a situation where people can just be completely blocked out. I mean, I'm like, man, you want to see some black crash outs? You really want to see some black crash outs? You want to see some Micah Johnsons? You want to see some Brian Gavin Longs? I'm like, all right, man, keep fucking around. Keep fucking around. Keep denying. Like, this is a funny thing. Like, you'll have white people, they'll be like, oh my God, we're oppressed and shit. Like, no, this is like actual real oppression. Like what you talking about with black people. Imagine if that was in the reverse. Imagine if white districts, which I don't even know how you would do that since the majority of the country, right? But imagine if white districts were cut in half so that black people could have the majority of the vote, right? You just start slicing off, pieces of the white community. I mean, obviously, black people's population is not that large, but there's areas in the South where black people are definitely the majority. Like, you'll see people talk about that with Georgia in the Atlanta area. I forget what podcast it was. It was somebody who was up there talking about, I didn't know how many black people there were in this country until I moved to Atlanta. Because Atlanta is a chocolate city. It's been known as a chocolate city. There's a lot of parts of this country. Once you go past the Missouri River, the Mississippi River, you know what I mean? And you go in the rain shadow of the Rockies or some shit like that. Ain't no black people living over there. You won't see black people until you get all the way out to LA. But right now it's like, all this shit is It's all on paper. No actions have been taken. No elections are up. You know what I mean? But, um, if this affects, because again, the majority of white people, they don't want Trump. They don't want Trump, up there. There's a whole bunch of white people that voted for Trump that are going to flip blue. So, I mean, I just think this is the last ditch attempt. Because personally, I think in the long run, I think the Republicans, they're done. You cannot have a fucked up economy and win as a political party, regardless of all the other shit that you can do. If the economy is booming and you're doing a whole bunch of fucked up shit in the background, there's a lot of people that they'll turn a blind eye and they don't care. Because, their kitchen table economics are solid. But the thing is when people, are paying, $5 a gallon for gas at the polls, and you up there doing, fascist type shit, right? People ain't really going to tolerate that. You see, there's only, Trump's got a very small, base right now. I mean, they up there taking down fucking, if you go on like the PA Turnpike, they used to have like all these like Trump monuments on the PA Turnpike and shit like that. Some of them suckers have been vandalized and shit. So, again, I already know what America is. I already know America, thinks it's Superman when it's really Homelander. I already know that. I don't know why the rest of y'all, and all the time that I've been talking on the internet, I don't know why the rest of y'all think that it's not. Talking to black people. I don't know why do you think that it's not. White people are just out here whining and fussing and bitching and complaining because their standard of living is going down. Because again, I've told you that white people have not built anything sustainable for themselves. Their whole first world conditions are predicated on the exploitation of the global South. And now that we're talking about a multipolar world where you have nations and peoples that are taking control of their own land and they're not willing to allow themselves to be manipulated like they were over the course of the last 500 years. And they're, coalescing and, forming Voltron and making partnerships with, other world powers other than Western powers, namely Russia and China and Iran and all these other nations, right? As they're doing that, like white people they just don't have that exploitable population anymore. That's why Mark Rubio went up there. Go watch that Mark Rubio speech, to the European leaders and shit like that. Mark Rubio was up there talking about, we need to recolonize the world. I mean, he might as well have said that. He might as well have said that. I'm like, oh, look at this shit. We need to, just very, very Nazi-esque language. White people are the Viltrumites of the world. That's who they are. And your average white person, they don't even, they're too stupid to understand how the world actually works. They just know, oh, it's not working like it's supposed to. Oh, make America great again. They don't understand how shit works. You know what I mean? They have that idea of solipsism and that everybody else is, an NPC and they're the main character and everybody is supposed to operate and serve them. And if anybody's suffering, it's supposed to be other people. It's not supposed to be me. Very narcissistic behavior. Extremely narcissistic behavior. And that's what the world has been dealing with. White people have built, the reputation they have is a reputation that they built. But I always find it funny. They're like, oh, we're going to lash out if we get backed into a corner. But somehow you don't expect other groups of people to lash out if you back them into a corner. You don't expect there to be some Nat Turner crash outs if you back them into a corner. Because you're actually backing them into a corner. It's not hyperbole like the shit that you all talk about, this manufactured anger that white people like to come up with. It's not. I mean, I don't know what else to say, about it. I'm not surprised. This has been, Supreme Court, and then what they said about we need to go back and look at what was it, gay marriage and shit. I like to see Clarence Thomas go up there and smack down what was it, smack down Lovings v. Virginia, right? Since he's married to a white woman, right? That'll be real interesting. You see, that's what I'm saying. Like, the logic is not consistent. And the other thing is that I forgot to mention is again, going back to why I think, we're talking Civil War level shit, because there was always a point in the past where it was understood that certain things were like the sacred cow, right? There's 9 Supreme Court justices. We're not adding and subtracting Supreme Court justices. There's 9. That's what it is. And just leave it there, right? Or that the gerrymandering is like something that, okay, you just don't do, right? Because it's dirty politics. You don't do that, right? But then you got the governor of Virginia, trying to gerrymander in a Democrat way. And I'm like, yeah, see, again, that you talking pre-Civil War indicators. Because those type of situations where, like, and I remember there was something that the Republicans did. The Republicans changed the rules. I don't know if it was the filibuster rule or something. They done changed the rules because they had the upper hand. And I'm like, y'all are stupid. Then they lost the election. Then the Democrats came into power, and then they were bitching because, like, of the rule change that they made. I forget what the fuck it was, but it was something that they did. They changed the rules, and then the Democrats got in, and then they were whining and bitching. I'm like, but you changed the rules because you thought that you were up. And so that's why certain things need to be a sacred cow, and you don't need to touch it. Because you start talking about, we're going to change the number of Supreme Court justices. And I'm like, so who's to say when the Republicans get in, they don't change it again? And it's just constant changing, this constant rule changing. That means that nobody really abides by the rules at that point because they think that they can constantly change the rules. It's like trying to play a game of Monopoly or the game of Life or whatever. I haven't played Life in a long time. But I'm saying, it's like playing Monopoly and the rules are constantly changing. Those are pre-Civil War indicators. Because that means that everybody's on some my way or the highway. Nobody's like, okay, we lost fair and square. I guess we have to do better or we have to improve. Or no. We have to get more of the electric vote. No, they're not doing that. They're like, we lost. You know what I mean? When we get back in there, the first order of business is we're going to change the rules to lock the other side out. I'm like, pre-Civil War indicators. Those are fighting words or fighting moves. So again, I don't. The shit like Steve Bannon said, and he said it. You don't have to say I said it. Steve Bannon said it. When Mom Donnie got elected, they got scared. They were like, yo, if the Democrats get back in, we're all going to jail. We're all going to jail for a bunch of shit. Pete Hegseth, going to jail. Fucking Elon Musk going to jail, right? Freaking Steve Miller going to jail. Steve Bannon going to jail. Trump going to jail. They all going to jail. They will be fucking tied up in so much litigation. You know what I mean? Pete Hegseth, they're going to get him for the double tap, the Venezuelan boats and shit. Oh, wait till all those JAGs, right? Wait till all the JAGs that they fired when Trump first got in office. Wait until they get in there because they're going to get all rehired and they got a bone to pick. Oh, please. Oh, nigga, please. They'll be raising their hand to lock them up for getting fired and shit. Because they got rid of the JAG so they could do whatever the fuck they wanted to do. right? You start getting rid of people that are the opposition, right? We're going to call it the Department of War. Just all this bullshit. Just bullshit. I remember Cap said this shit to me when I was feeling indifferent about Trump being elected. And he said this shit very early on. He said, I hear your anger. He's like, I hear you. But he's like, just understand that when all this is done, when all this is said and done, that, there's gonna be a lot of repair involved. He's like, there's gonna be a lot of repair involved because all this shit is gonna have to be fucking corrected. And I really see it with international relations. Like fucking like whatever the connections the US had with Europe, please. I was watching a white man, I don't know what country he was from, he had an accent. And he was just talking about how he was like, nah, the fucking United States is unreliable. Motherfuckers all over the place. Like they don't fuck with Trump in Europe. Like, this motherfucker's all over the place. Even if you remove race out of it and say, oh, I'm a black man criticizing Trump. You remove race out of it. What is the big problem? The problem is even amongst white people, Trump is like your fucking drunk uncle that comes to the fucking Thanksgiving or something. You know what I mean? He's like the person that you don't want to, you got to take the keys away and shit. He's in that territory. He's in take grandpa's keys away territory. Right? The U.S. has just shown its ass across the board. You got fucking Iran, fucking, we'll just stop the Strait of Hormuz and shut down the global economy. You come over here fucking with us, right? We're gonna launch missiles at your neighbors. Oh, I bet you didn't see that shit coming, right? Fuck them Sunni Muslims. I bet you didn't see that coming, right? And then so everybody mad at the U.S. because okay, you want to be stupid, okay, then you be stupid with your shit. But don't be fucking up my shit. You know what I mean? And the fact that the United States went and fucked up everybody else's shit, you know what I mean? Everybody now is reevaluating their alliances. And the thing is it's not just Trump. It's the American people. It's all these fucking dumbass white people. Yes, I said it. All these dumbass white people that went up there and voted for Trump because of racism or white supremacy, or, you thought you was sticking it to the Democrats. All this goofy, uninformed shit, the way that y'all fucking vote. Because even if Trump gets out of there, they cannot, these other countries cannot rely on the United States because the people that do the voting are fucked up. It's not about Trump. It's about the mindset of the fucking people. This is why I said in the video that I did, this is why I said that, when it comes to, black people in America, being the soul of America, and black people having, the strife that they have with racism and white supremacy in America, I'm like, the Europeans need to be concerned about that shit. They should be backing up FBAs on that. Why should they be backing up FBAs, on that? Because, as I've said before, if somebody wanted me, one of these white people in my comment section wanted me to break this down, the final form of white supremacy is fascism. I got that from Christopher Grandison. Christopher Grandison, he's got the YouTube channel. I think his channel, the title of his videos is like Xenogenesis and all that stuff, where he talks about understanding the primal primitive urges of white people and why they're racist and the shit that they do. Kind of it's evolutionary psychology. It's kind of along the lines of damn, why am I going blank? Oh, yes. Michael Bradley with his book, Iceman Inheritance. So Iceman inheritance, he talks about that. White people grew up in a cold climate. They had to plan. They had to be long-term planners because of winters and all that shit. Where black people grew up in the Garden of Eden and they're short-term planners, and they're less hostile because again, when you're in the Garden of Eden, right, you're not fighting over resources and shit. But Europeans, because of winters and all that shit, they got to fight over resources, and you had tribes and the whole again Iceman inheritance. The idea that is white people birthed out of the fucking ice age and they're hostile and they're savage and they're violent and all that other shit. And that's the thesis of what his book is really about. And it's a white man who said all this shit, right? But the evolutionary psychology people, they're like, oh, we don't really subscribe to that, da 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 da. They want to dismiss it. But no, what ends up happening is when white people are economically struggling, right? This is what you saw even after World War II with the Weimar Republic and everything. I mean, World War One, after, Germany got hit with a whole bunch of sanctions and they had hyperinflation and all that other shit. That's what allowed somebody like, Hitler to come to power, right? You do the whole Senator Palpatine thing, right? The attempt on my life has left me scarred, right? You go up there and then you say how, you're going to, if you vote for me, I'll solve all your problems, right? So, Hitler goes up there, says he's going to solve all their problems, right? Turns the whole country into a fucking war machine, right? So the country's a war machine. And what ends up happening with the Nazi ideology is that, and I gotta back up a little bit because somebody left they responded because I laid it out, but then they responded and they were like, what did they say? They were like, yeah, but the majority of people that killed each other in World War One and World War II were Europeans because it was Europeans fighting Europeans, right? And I'm like, that doesn't negate what I said. That reinforces what I said, which is that the final form of white supremacy is fascism, and fascism leads to white genocide. That's what it leads to, right? And it's like, oh, how are you drawing that conclusion? Okay, so we go with the age of exploration. White people, they leave Europe, they conquer the world, colonization, right? After you're done colonizing, right, after the Berlin Conference, you're done colonizing all of the non-white people. Okay, so you go out there and you colonize all the non-white people, right? Then what ends up happening is that white supremacy turns in on itself because there's no brakes on white supremacy. Eventually, again, it's like the fucking Viltrumites. Okay, they turn on each other. I am the supreme of the whites. And that's what they say. And then they go out there and then, the other white people who don't agree with them, because you have to agree with the fascists, because if you don't agree with the fascists, you're an enemy of the state. Right? If you don't agree with the fascists, right, you are blocking, their vision of total world domination. Okay? You're blocking all that. So now they got to fight you. Even though you're like, hey, we want the white people to be on top. But like, nigga, you don't take it too far. Too late. Now you got to fight. Now you're having World War III. Okay? World War I was white people fighting white people. World War II was white people fighting white people. In World War III, I guarantee you it's going to be majority white people fighting white people. So, again, when y'all are like, oh yeah, white supremacy, it's a good thing. Okay, if you want another freaking, freaking 100 million Europeans to be deleted, then go fuck around and find out. Because that's what's going to happen at the end of all this. Once the shit gets too far. So again, why should Europeans care about, what's going on with black people in America? Okay, because white people in America are fucked up. Okay, the South was never punished after the Civil War. Okay, they got all these white supremacist ideas because America has a fucking race problem. And then despite the fact that some Europeans co-sign because of, they have low birth rates because the elite white capitalists aren't sharing wealth with them. At the end of the day, all of this is going to end up being a problem and spill back on them. Because again, you have white supremacist ideology. White supremacist ideology turns into white supremacist politics. White supremacist politics turn into fascism, and then fascism turns into, we're gonna dominate all these brown people, which essentially it's seen that they're already dominated, right? Because they're, with the exception of what, China, right? There really is no other force that can challenge Western powers, right? So what ends up happening? I mean, what was Trump talking about, right? Obviously, he went into Venezuela, but he was talking about taking Iceland from who? The Netherlands, another group of white people, right? And then the justification for no, you can't have that. Why can't he have it? Why can't he have it? It doesn't really belong to you. Right? See, colonists have a hard time justifying not being colonized by other white people. Somebody who took and stole somebody else's shit is going to have a hard time arguing that somebody shouldn't be able to come in and take their shit that they stole. You see? So the fact of the matter is when you're looking at Western civilization, Europeans, you have to recognize that they're like the Klingons of planet Earth. The Klingons, the Viltrumites, the Sith Lords. Like, that's what they are. That's literally what they are and how they operate. Okay? You can't go out into the rest of the world, rape, pillage, plunder, steal, and do all that shit and then think that they're going to be honest with each other. This is why that white guy made that video, and I'm mad that YouTube took it down. That video called, morality is for friends. Where he was talking about how, white people should only be moral with other white people. Which I argued, I'm like, well, if, in that case, there's no rule of law, and black people should just crash out. I don't give a fuck what your laws are. Your laws don't mean shit. That's basically what you're telling me. Rules for thee, but not for me. That's basically what you're saying. So when we get to talking about, freaking Austin Metcalf and Carmelo Anthony, it was like, well, Carmelo Anthony, well, if that's how you were feeling that day, then it is what it is. Fuck the law. Fuck the law. You felt you were threatened and you pulled your knife. Well, it is what it is. Right? It ain't no law. He got to go to court and everything else like that. Because if you're basically saying that if the shoe was on the other foot and we reversed the situation, that it would just be, that's what that nigger had coming, blah, 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 then shit. What are you bitching about then? And see, that's what I don't like about white people. Because and that's the one area I'll give Amazing Lucas some credit on is when he saw how shit was going down with the Ahmaud Arbery and the what was that white woman's name? The white woman that stormed the Capitol, Ashley Babbitt. You know what I mean? The situation with her. I was like, wait a minute. What happened to all the, if he would have only complied, how come that didn't apply to Ashley Babbitt? All of a sudden it was that Capitol police officer, he needs to be tried for treason. Like, huh? What happened is she didn't comply. He said, don't come in here, and was pointing a Glock 22 at her. And she came in the room and she caught, some spear gold dot. That's what that was. Right? So and he started seeing that shit over time. How the white people, all you had to do was just change the race. Just change the race, and all of a sudden, all their rhetoric just did a 180. All of a sudden, no more, the cop was black, and the person that got gunned down and got shot 57 times was white. There was no, he needs to comply. You see, there's white people in this country, like, especially, and I'm sure I know I got some black cops that listen to me, Cause I see them in the comment section. They say they're in law enforcement or ex-law enforcement and shit like that. And they'll tell you. There's white folks that just, at the end of the day, they just are not gonna try to put themselves in a situation where a black person has any authority over them. Doesn't matter if the state grants it. They refuse to be told what to do by a black person. They just absolutely refuse. It's part of that, white supremacist racial hierarchy concept. I mean, any other time they'll be running around. We respect our veterans. Back the blue. You know what I mean? They'll have the thin blue line sticker on their car and everything. Yeah, until that big burly black police officer, that big burly state trooper, hops out the car with that flat brim hat. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. Then all of a sudden, what are you pulling me over for? They get all indignant and shit. You see? Nah, America has a fucking race problem. And in having a race problem, again, they think that the solution is, and it's a two-part combo because you got the race problem. They think the solution is, let's put some Nazis in the White House. And then you have the other thing, the economic problem, right? Where white people start thinking, we don't care what you got to do. Just put the genie back in the bottle and bring us back to the 1950s where white people dominated the earth. Right? Because for the past 500 years, seriously speaking, most countries did not gain their independence from colonization until after World War II. Right? India, Pakistan, right? You're talking 1947, right? You're talking the countries in West Africa, you're talking 1960s, right? These countries didn't gain their freedom until after World War II. That's why I'm saying fascism comes after, the freaking, the G side of white people. That doesn't happen. It doesn't come until fascism has nowhere else to go. They're like, fascism's like, okay, what is the next place to conquer? Oh, I know. We'll go out here and we'll conquer other white people. And then that's what they go out there and do. You have so much of a slight disagreement, and then all of a sudden, and look how fascism reacts the way that Trump reacts. You can't criticize fascism, right? The freaking Germany's up there saying that the United States has been thoroughly embarrassed by Iran. And then Trump, he claps back and he starts bitching, oh man, fuck Germany. Germany can eat these nuts, niggas, all this shit. Trump can start going off. Right? So now all of a sudden, oh no, see there's no, what's the word I'm looking for? It's not cordiality. It's not a word. They stop being cordial between each other. And then it's just a back and forth of white ideals. Don't get me wrong. White nations and white people, they still want to be white supremacists. But there's degrees to the shit. There's levels to the shit. Not all white supremacists are fascist. Not all white supremacists want to be fascist. Not all white supremacists want to live underneath a fascist system. And that's where the white supremacist will inevitably clash with the white fascist. You see? Because think about it. That's what World War II was. America was, prior to 1965, obviously during World War II, they had segregated regiments. It was a formal system of apartheid. It was one white supremacist nation fighting another white supremacist nation, which is Nazi Germany. America's not off the hook for that. America wasn't some racial utopia. America was a system of racial apartheid. America was a system where Booker T. Spicely came back from World War II, right? Had an argument with a white man on a bus about sitting in the front of the bus And when he got off the bus after getting kicked off of the bus driver shot him in the back multiple times with a 45. You see? So like, you can't forget that. I feel like people forget that. They're like, oh, America, we were the good guys. Right? That's what they think. And I say we with air quotes. No, it was white supremacy fighting white supremacy, which leads to what? Massive amounts of what? White death. Yeah, we live on a finite planet with finite resources. There's nowhere else to go. Like, after you conquer all the black and brown people around the globe, then what? What do you think? They stop and they say, "Oh, okay, we finally, recognized." No, Europeans been fighting and slaughtering the hell out of each other, since forever. All you gotta do is go and pull up how many wars that they've had in Europe. All they did was do that Braveheart shit, with William Wallace and out there on the fucking field and fucking two groups of white people in an open field running at each other, screaming with fucking swords and shields and pickaxes and shit like that. They've been doing that shit forever. Forever. The amount of mass graves that already exist in Europe is astonishing. So that is what the end of white supremacy, leads to. That is the final form of white supremacy. And so, what was I about to say? Trying to think. So yeah, when it comes to the Europeans and it comes to them, friggin' saying, "Oh, what is our relationship or connection to America?" You need to look at the black people. I'll tell you that right now. You don't want to support black people? It don't matter to me. It don't matter to me. Black people been by themselves, and that shit does not matter to us. We've been solo dolo. But the fact of the matter is, if the shit spirals out of control, oh yeah, we'll be done, and all that shit, and black people be trying to escape America and everything else. If you go to worst case scenario, but if you think that shit's going to stay in the West, no, absolutely not. Absolutely not. Hell, they'll try to use that there's too many minorities in Europe as a pretense to go into Europe and take over Europe completely. And then America will become the new Fourth Reich. And it'll try to control what people call the Anglosphere. They'll try to control all of that. And it'll be Wolfenstein, but in reverse. That's what you're looking at. Because you don't want to tackle racism. Oh, that racism in America, that ain't got nothing to do with me. Yeah, okay. And America is what again? A white supremacist nation with the strongest military in the world that you can't currently fuck with? I'm like, I think that's your business. I think that matters to you when you got a nation that votes for a president that goes up there and says, "I think I'll just take Greenland. I think I'll just tank it. I think I'll make Canada the 51st state. I think I'll just do that." Oh yeah, you hella need to care. Because the white people who are the racists, they vote for somebody like Trump and they put Trump in. And so if you don't deal with the racism in America, then what ends up happening? You're just going to have continued cycles of the white supremacists in America continuously trying to vote a freaking, a megalomaniac, narcissistic, a malignant narcissist into power yet again. And it'll just keep on happening. A white supremacist, malignant narcissist, megalomaniac. They're just going to keep voting that type of motherfucker into power. I'll tell you that right now. But, there's the other problem of, again, Europeans, white people creating a system that isn't based off of exploiting other groups of people. I don't think that they can do it. They've never done it. When have they ever done it? Even when they were by themselves in Europe, minding their business, what was the situation? Kings, queens, nobles, and peasants. Right? The majority of white people were serfs. That's what they were. Right? Sire, may I have a few more shillings? Right? Like that was y'all. Right? Y'all had no status. Right? You were like the dullets of India and shit. You were like the untouchables. Right? A knight would come through on his fucking horse, and you know, and you'd have to bow. You just sire, right? You had to speak all, take your hat off and grovel and shit. Probably get on your hands and knees and act like you were the stepping stool for him to get off of his fucking horse because the motherfucker was short. He didn't even belong on the horse, But he was the king's nephew, short ass motherfucker getting off the horse, Yeah, that's your feudalism is your default culture. That's what you were operating in for centuries. Meanwhile, you read Christopher Columbus and, everybody else is living all harmoniously and, living, in some, look like the damn, what was that movie? The fucking, what was that movie called? The start with the VAL, Valeria or something like that. What was that movie with they were in space or something like that? The city of 1,000 worlds or whatever. Like them damn aliens that were on the beach with the pearls. You had people living like that. Them Arawak Indians, them Taino Indians. That's how they were living. You know what I mean? They were running around on some Garden of Eden shit. You know what I mean? Imagine that. Imagine it being, 1450 and you're in Puerto Rico, and you just running around. You got a leaf on your crotch, bad bitches walking around with the titties out. You know what I mean? The ocean, the clear white beaches, tropical sands and shit, right? That's what everybody go to Puerto Rico now for, right? You know what I mean? Cracking coconuts and eating them and shit, right? Chilling on the beach, fishing with your boys, right? Going back to the village and, dancing around the fucking bonfire and shit, right? Out there on the canoe, right? Looking up at the sky and seeing every fucking star and constellation because you didn't have any light pollution. Oh, please. And here you got friggin' Christopher Columbus like, oh, they will make excellent servants. Even Queen Isabella, even she was like, yo, like, what the fuck are you doing? Because a couple of freaking Christopher Columbus, because he was doing basically sex trafficking fucking children and whatnot. And so you had Christopher, the Queen, some of Christopher Columbus's own men was like, yo, this nigga wildin'. And even Queen Isabella, she was like, you will treat my royal subjects accordingly. They are my royal subjects. You know what I mean? Like, because she just claimed the Indians and whatnot. That was a whole thing. Somebody wrote a comment. They said they threw Christopher Columbus in jail and they don't teach that shit. I don't know about all that. I haven't looked it up. Let me see what it says real quick. Let me see if I can get this to come up. Did they throw Christopher Columbus in jail? Did Christopher Columbus get thrown in jail? Let's see. Yes, he was arrested and imprisoned in 1500 after a blank into the rule of Hispaniola, and he was sent back to Spain in chains, though he was later released. The key detail is that he was not jailed for ordinary criminal conduct. In Spain, it was tied to accusations of misrule, abuse of authority as governor of the colonies. What crimes did Christopher Columbus commit in Hispaniola, which is the island of Haiti and the Dominican Republic? Historical sources of modern summaries say Columbus's rule of Hispaniola involved enslaving Taino people, forcing labor under threat of death, brutal punishments like whipping and mutilation, and sending captives away for sale. Accounts also describe his administration as using public beheadings, ear and nose mutilation, torture, and repression of resistance, though historians note some accusations come from hostile reports and are debated in detail. So the clearest answer is he was accused of severe abuses that would today be described as slavery, torture, mutilation, kidnapping, and murder rather than a single neat criminal charge. Was he accused of sex trafficking or the like? Let's see what it says. Yes, there are historical accusations that Columbus's men and possibly Columbus's administration were involved in sexual exploitation of indigenous women in Hispaniola. The most specific claim you'll see is that he oversaw or enabled the sale of Taino girls into sexual slavery, including very young girls. Some modern writers point to 1,500 letters as evidence, while others argue that letter is being read out of context. How do you read that out of context? So the careful answer is he was accused of involvement of sexual exploitation and trafficking like practices, but the historical record is debated on how directly Columbus himself ordered or managed it. What did Queen Isabella have to say about it? Let's see. Queen Isabella appears to have condemned Columbus's abuse of indigenous people and ordered the Taino captives be freed rather than treated as slaves. The clearest historical point is that she had previously instructed Columbus to treat the indigenous people very well and lovingly and not injure them, which shows she formally rejected the cruelty and unauthorized enslavement reported from Hispaniola. The famous line, often paraphrased as, "Who is this Columbus who dares to give out my vassals as slaves?" is widely repeated, but the exact wording is preserved more as a later historical retelling than as a verbatim royal document. So I'm getting this from one source of AI. But yeah, again, pathological. Absolutely pathological. And I could go on and talk about how, people know who, you can't do this type of shit for 500 years and then think that people are going to continue to give you the benefit of the doubt. Everybody knows now. It's the age of information. Documentaries are all over the fucking place. Everybody fucking knows at this point. They all know. You know what I mean? It's just like with the little hats and the fucking Chinese that referred to them as dogs, the lying dogs or whatever the hell they said. That Mr. Epstein, talked about in his emails. But it's just fucked up. It's fucked up. And the really the crazy part is just the whole way that, it's like white people rode the wave of the exploitation of the global South. They had a nice little 500-year run, right, for the most part. better in the last 100 years for them, right? And then the white elites don't want to share the wealth with them, hoarding all the wealth, right? They have no real economy, jobs shipped overseas, right? Because it's always about capital, chasing the highest return on investment, right? They don't care about white people preserving their families and everything. White people always like a fucking knee-jerk reaction, start pointing to everything but those that actually have all the power that look like them. They start pointing to, oh, it's because the blacks are breathing up all the white man's air. Oh, it's because of Syrian refugees. It's the Muslims. Oh, it's the Jews. It's the little hats. Oh, it's this. I mean, they're just such victims. They're such victims. But yeah, I'm like, you've never created anything sustainable for yourself that doesn't involve other people. Like, you can't do it. You know, I mean, even the white guy that I tell you I talk to all the time and everything, like even with him, you know, he's like, oh, well, I mean, everybody did. Now he's trying to reach and try to grab into history and claim that, you know, history is nothing but a whole bunch of us, you know, fighting and challenging each other, right? That's what history is. So, you know, so when it comes to groups of people not having a historical record of them conquering other people or warring or whatever, like in other words, like it's like focusing on the criminals of civilization, right? Because criminals of civilization, the people who engage in the crimes against humanity, right? They're the ones that make their mark, right? They're the loudest. But the other groups that live in peace for like thousands of years and shit, mind their fucking business and whatnot, like they don't get any acknowledgement. Like they get no acknowledgement. You know, and when you think of like, you know, particular groups and shit like that, and you know how like even like you think of like Chechnya and stuff like that, like motherfuckers was minding their business and the Russians come in there. You know, people who have been fighting these larger groups, you know, that just want to be left alone. Right? They just want to be left to you know, their own devices. You know what I mean? Like the Pakistanis. Pakistan is a Muslim country, but they didn't ask to be Muslim. You know what I mean? Muhammad bin al-Qasim came in there and forced Islam on them, right? You know what I mean? So there's certain groups that are more warring than others, but to sit there and suggest everybody has engaged in you know, conquest level of violence, like no. You know what I mean? First off, you have to have long periods of stability and prosperity in order to develop, you know, high technology and you know, ancient, you know, megalithic structures and shit. I don't know who that white guy is. He goes around India and he gets real all up in the temples. You know what I mean? Like usually you just see like these like National Geographic from like 50 feet away, you know, temple shit. No, like he gets in like real close. He's like Pravin. What's that guy's name? Pravin something. He's the other Indian guy. He gets real close and he's like, look at this shit. He's like, see this stone statue? And then he'll take like a laser light and shine it right through the back of the statue and shit, and take a needle or not a needle, but take a, you know, piece of string and be like, look, it goes through. Like, I'm like, yo, how the hell you carve some shit like that, right? You know, so I'm just saying, you don't get to that level of making these Hindu Indian temples, the temples in Myanmar and all that. You don't the Angkor Wat in Cambodia. You don't get to that level. You know what I mean? Unless you have a lot of peace and prosperity for a long time. You know, but I'm kind of more of a believer of that Iceman inheritance, man. I'm more of a believer of, you know, that all white people know is war. You know, they just war. And when they were in Europe, all they were doing was warring with each other. Vlad the Impaler. You know what I mean? Just warring with each other. You know, the whole, even with Rome and Spartacus. And, you know, I didn't even know Spartacus was a real figure. I had to go look that up. It was one of the slave revolts. And then they got this road that cuts through Italy, like diagonally, right? It cuts like straight through the country and everything. And they killed so many slaves that they had them all crucified, like on that road from end to end. Just thousands upon thousands of fucking slaves rotting in the sun to be a reminder to the slaves that, how dare you? I'm like, yo, these people are sick, man. Because Rome at one time had more slaves than they had actually Roman citizens. You see? I'm like, so the European ain't, let's sit there and say, oh, Rome is the pinnacle of, of European civilization that we all know that they got from the fucking Greeks, and the Greeks got that shit from the Egyptians, the black Egyptians, as they described them. You know what I mean? No, they have not built anything sustainable. Like, you can't build anything without rape, pillaging, and plunder some other group of people, stealing their labor, stealing their life force energy. Having them, go out there and grow your crops. I mean, if you go, I don't know if you've ever seen go on Google and type in India famine and look at the famines that the British caused in India, exporting rice and other goods back to, Britain and shit. I mean, that's why that big ass painting of, King Charles that was all like covered in red. That's why that shit was so accurate. And shit was so on the nose. It's like, yeah, that's what you represent. Genocide. That's what you represent. But I mean, I covered a lot of topics in here, but I'm just saying, like, that's where this shit is headed. Is where this shit is headed. United States, if the United States doesn't collapse and implode, again, it's got, we got this fake economy. I mean, I didn't even know that Europe invested, it's money, because they went for austerity. They didn't really invest, but the investments that they do have, they're all tied into the fucking S&P 500 and shit. You know what I mean? So people got all this fake money. It's like there's no economy in America. There's only the casino, which is Wall Street. So everybody's putting their money in the casino. And I'm like, but you don't have anything real and tangible. You're not producing anything. Germany can't even be competitive because they don't have enough. Their whole thing with going green before they even actually had enough power plants to power the country. And then you got the whole thing with Russia, and then you got the Nord Stream pipeline being blown up and all that other shit. I'm like, oh yeah, you're fucked. You can't compete with expensive electricity. How can you compete? How can you manufacture better than China? China's over there building the world's largest dam and shit. That's why everybody's got all eyes on China. China has its own set of problems, but I'm just saying. It says that this shit to me just does not look like it's going to last. It does not look like it's going to stay afloat. And typically what happens, at these inflection points in societies or human civilization is that, there's usually conflict and war and bloodshed, and, a third of the population gets purged. You know what I mean? And then after that, they rebuild. And then, this whole cycle of booms and busts, which to me is just wholly fucking unnecessary. Part of the problem I see greatly, especially in America, is the fact that, the society cannot cater to, exclusively cater to the elderly. We have a society, we have a gerontocracy that caters exclusively to the elderly. And I talk about this in the book, Understanding White Supremacy. That's what we have. They got all these old people hoarding the wealth. Oh, why aren't the young people having kids? Because you're hoarding all the wealth and rent is $2,000. Why aren't you having kids? Like, you don't even get oops babies at $2,000 rent. You can't even accidentally fuck a bitch and get her pregnant when rent is $2,000. You know what I mean? Because if you don't have that $2,000, if you don't have that job that allows you to afford $2,000 for a rental, you know what I mean? Then where are you fucking? At your parents' house? You know what I'm saying? Like, nothing that they do is conducive. It's not even conducive to themselves. That's how pathological, in my opinion, these people are. I'm like, you have full control. You have literally full control. Nobody is stopping you from doing any of the shit that you're fucking doing. But no, it's the greed within the system. It's the 5 white motherfuckers at the top that are hoarding everything, even from other white people. Inside trading, no term limits, operating in the interest of corporations as opposed to operating in the interest of people, right? No high-speed railway in America. No, we're going to make them buy cars, and we're going to have highways and roads, and that's what we're going to do because, we don't want people to have effective public transportation. We want them to buy cars. Right? We want to keep them in a perpetual cycle of debt. First it was the mortgage, then it was the automobile. Now they want you to have a subscription for every goddamn fucking thing. You know what I mean? Like even when it comes to Microsoft 365, I remember you used to just buy, fucking Microsoft Windows for Windows 98. You know what I mean? And you had the CD, you had a copy of that shit. You know what I mean? And you just had that shit. You had the little password on it. Boom, you were done. People have been using Word 98 forever. And then they were like, why are we doing this? We should charge $12.99, for whatever copy for, every month you're getting charged to use Microsoft Word. And then somebody came out. They came out with some jailbreak Microsoft called it's like Microsoft Liberty or something like that. I forget what it was called. Microsoft something. I forget what it's called. What is the jail? Let me see. What is the jailbreak version of Microsoft Word? What is the jailbreak version of Microsoft Word? I think it's called Liberty. Let me see. Oh, I can't help with the crap. Blah, 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 blah. Microsoft, student work, If you meant something. Unofficial version, the common legitimate option is a web app through Microsoft 365, and Liberty doesn't. I forget what the fuck it's called. I'm looking for the name. Name of the product. It's going to tell me, I can't help you with that. The name you're probably thinking of, LibreOffice. That's what it's called. A free open source office suite that people often use instead of Microsoft Word. Yep, that's what it is. Jailbreak is what they consider for iPhone. I'm using the wrong terminology. You see, I learn something every fucking day. Every fucking day. I'm telling you, man, if y'all not using AI, I don't know what you're doing. Your knowledge base should be expanding exponentially just simply by every fucking question you have. And I mean that. Every time you have a question, you need to be clicking on, something and being like, yo, what is this? What was I looking up today? There was some random shit I was looking up today. I was looking up what peat is. Like peat, like in the UK, in like Scotland or Ireland, one of them, they got the fucking bogs and they use it to burn it's not like coal, but it's like basically dry, like they got to dry it, but it's like vegetation, like half broken down vegetation from the bogs that don't have any microbes because there's no oxygen in there, and they can use it to like burn, they dry it out and then they can use it for their like fireplaces and shit like that. I was looking that up. What else was I looking up today? There was something else I was looking up. I forget. It's all on my list. I can go back and look it up. But every time I got a question, man, I just sit there. I'm like, what is this, man? Let me look this shit up, man, so that I know more. I just don't understand people who, on a side note, I don't understand people who don't take the time to look shit up. Because there's no excuse. There's no excuse to be dumb at this point. I can't even tolerate dumb people at this point. Motherfuckers asking questions in the comment section. But I'm like, why are you asking me when you can already look it up? Don't come to me if you haven't looked it up already. You know what I mean? If you've looked it up and you're like, look, I I tried looking for the answer. I couldn't find it. Do you know about X? Maybe I do, maybe I don't. But at least tell me that you already put in some, most of the legwork before you come running over to me. At least tell me, yeah. I'll try to look it up, but I couldn't find anything. Maybe you got the answer for the shit. Hate when people do that. It's lazy. But anyway, let me end this video. I'm finished with this shit. I talked long enough. Damn, an hour and a half. The fuck? Anyway, that's my video, SWPL. Don't forget to comment, share, like, and subscribe.
On the scene, diamond blingy whole screen. Check a boy Louis V. I'm so fresh and so clean. Stuff them bands in my jeans. Slap them 30s in them things. Pull the trigger, let it sing. Then go smoke a Russian cream.
Boo, hold on.
Yeah.
Hello?
Where
Where we at? Oh, you want to know where I'm at? We outside!